Hey, welcome back to a brand new school year. This is Mr. Takeda Teaches Algebra. I'm your host, Mr. Takeda. I'm going to teach some algebra right now, and here I am. And I'm using this today because I want to show you what I expect in your notebooks as you take notes from my videos. So let's go. So first off, I'm going to close this here so you can see my screen. We have a title here. So the first thing we want to do in our notebook is put today's date, and I think today is going to be like September 7th, I believe. I'm just guessing ahead. I'm not sure. And then I want to, you want to put your title of the lesson 1.1, solving simple equations. So I'm doing that in a notebook right now, and I'll show you what that looks like. I'm putting that on the top line here. So it's going to look like this. So the date, you have the date here. Let me see, sorry. We have the date, and then we have the title. Okay, and I want you to start every new lesson from the video on a new page. Okay, so this is the top of a new page. So then let's go ahead and look at the lesson here. So the first thing we see is that we have some core concepts. So we're going to be putting some definitions in our notebook from the book, and these are important because we need to be able to talk about properties. We have to use English language to describe what we're doing in math. So go ahead and add these to your notes, and I'll do the same. You can pause the video at any time in order to do that. So I'm actually going to pause it as I record it, so it's going to come back pretty quick, but I'm going to show you what my notebook looks like in just a second. So go ahead and pause the video and come back when you're ready. So here I am back, and here's what my notes look like right now. You can see I put the core concept. I labeled the addition property of equality, and I just copied down the words and the algebra. Same for subtraction property of equality. Okay, so that's the big idea we're going to talk about here on the first couple example problems. And so let's go ahead and do those. So what I need you to do now is we're going to label this next part example problems. All right. So the next part in your notebook, example problems. So let me find my, here we go. Just like this, example problems. Example problems. And we're going to do these problems. You're going to do these problems under this section right here. Okay? So the first problem we have here is x minus 3 equals negative 5. Now the idea with all equations is we want to isolate x. Always isolate the variable. In this case, it's x. The first case, it's x. The second case will be y. Okay, so let's go ahead and also it says justify each step, so we need to do that as well. The first equation, x minus 3 equals negative 5. Well, if my left side is x, that's my variable, but I'm subtracting 3 from that. In order to make this side back to being x, I have to add 3 to this side, right? Because x minus 3 plus 3 will basically be x, which is what I want. Whatever I do to one side of the equation, I do to the other side as well. Okay. One thing I'll be looking for in your work as you learn to show your work in algebra is your equal signs As you work down, line up, so that your equal signs line up. So let's simplify this side. -5 plus 3 is -2. Over here, the -3 and the +3 basically cancel each other out into a 0. So I'm left with x on this side. So I've isolated the variable, and I get x equals -2. Okay. And this step, I should have labeled this before, but it says to justify each step. Adding 3 to both sides, of course, is that addition property of equality. And you can abbreviate if you need to. That's okay. I just need to know that you know what you're doing with that. Okay, so let's take a look at this. Equation one more time. My equal signs line up. My solution. The solution is when the variable's been isolated. The solution's on the other side of the equal sign. The solution, I put a box around it. Okay, and it should be at the bottom. We work down. Work down. Remember, work down. And be sure that we have be sure that your left side and right side are distinct. That basically I can tell which your left and right sides. Okay, so get that into your notebook if you don't have it already. I'm going to move this stuff so I can do the second problem here. Okay, so over here I've got 0.9 equals y plus 2.8. Okay, so this side has the variable, but it's 2.8 greater than the variable I'm looking for. So in order to kind of set it back to being just the variable, I'm going to subtract 2.8 from this side. And the subtraction property of equality says that whatever I do to one side, I must do to the other. So I'm going to subtract 2.8 from this side as well. Okay, so simplifying both sides. Now again, I want to make sure my equal sign is, in line with the equal sign above it. So I have a left side and a right side. 2.8 minus 2.8 is 0, so this side just becomes y, because y plus 0 equals 0. And then 0.9 minus 2, negative 1.9. And again, the solution is at the bottom of my work. I'm working down. Essentially, if you look at it, I'm removing things away from the variable because I want to isolate the variable. And once I get the variable alone, then I'm done. And that should be at the bottom of your work. Okay, so that's these two examples. Let's move on to the next screen here. Okay, multiplication property of equality and division property of equality. I need you to get these things into your notes right now. So add these into your notes. Pause the video, and when you're done, I'll rejoin you. Okay, so just backing up a little bit, here's what I want to show you my my notebook so far here. You'll see that I have my example problems for the first part for the addition and subtraction property of equality. Next, with my justifications, just like from the video, right? And then I did my core concepts for multiplication property of equality and the division property of equality. You'll see on the bottom where I did division property of equality, I wrote A over C. Where is it? A over C and B over C. I used that type of division because in algebra we don't really use those other division symbols very often. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some examples now regarding the multiplication and division properties of equality. Okay, so let's do each of these here. Put these into your label the next section again, example problems, and we're going to do these three problems together. Okay, so the first problem is a little tricky, and we need to talk about this first statement here. So I'm going to take a little, a little time just to explain this first expression. When I say expression, I'm talking about just the left side of this equation. Now this whole thing is negative, so that means I can think of this as negative n divided by a positive 5, because negative divided by a positive is a negative. Or I can think of it as a positive n divided by a negative 5. Right? So again, the whole thing is negative, but it's the result of a positive divided by a negative, or a negative divided by a positive. Okay, so think of this fraction, this negative fraction, this way. All right, so let's do this equation here. Okay, so since I want to isolate the n, I can think of this as n divided by negative 5, which means in order to isolate the n, I want to multiply this side by a negative 5. And I want to multiply the other side also by negative 5. So this is the the multiplication property of equality. Okay, let's simplify. So this side, negative 5 divided by negative 5 is a 1. So 1 times n is n. And over here, negative 3 times negative 5 is positive 15. Let me go back one little step here, and let's talk about this again here real quick. Negative 5 divided by negative 5, any number divided by itself is what? 1. So I can think of this as 1n equals 15. And of course, 1n is just n. So n equals 15. Okay, so that's a little bit more clear, showing my thinking there. Okay, so in this case for b, what do I have? I've got pi times x equals negative 2 times pi. I want to isolate the x. So I have to divide both sides by pi. Right? So whatever I do to one side, I do to the other. This is division property of equality. Okay, so pi divided by pi is 1, so 1 times x equals, again, pi divided by pi is also 1, so negative 2 times 1 in this case, so x equals negative 2. Example C over here, 1.3z equals 5.2. I want to isolate the variable. So in order to get rid of the 1.3, which is multiplying z, I divide both sides by 1.3. So 1.3 divided by 1.3 is, again, just 1. So 1 times z is z. Now, I'm not showing that 1 every time here. So at this stage, I'm not going to show it. And then 5.2 divided by 1.3 is 4. So z equals 4. Okay, so those are those examples. So those should be the last thing in your book. So what we're going to do, the problem solving and the word problem I'm going to save for class. And so we can work on those in class. But you have your basic notes now. Hopefully your notes look good like mine. And we'll do the rest in class. Let me pop up here again. Here we go. Okay, so I'll see you in class tomorrow. This was kind of a slow lesson because of all the having to show you the notebook and everything, but you'll see it's pretty basic what I want. Thanks a lot. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.